Hello, we are live. I'm Ariel Serber. I'm excited to have Allison Byers here. We actually went live, I don't know when, but much more than over a year ago to talk about pretty much what we're going to talk about today, but in different context, different way. And as the saying goes, you don't enter the same river twice, even if it's the same spot, right? So, because you're different, things are different, and situations are constantly changing. But about a year and a half or so ago, we talked about her campaign around Put a Woman on It, which was all about uh, panels being completely manels, and the how much it limits obviously women, but how much it also limits just the panel itself to its own detriment. And so I feel like we you don't know the impact you make or the dominoes that fall from it. But I'm glad to have her back. She just wrote a new book, and I'm excited to talk about it. But I also want to get engagement and questions from the audience. So if you comment on what's going on, what's on your mind, what's a challenge for you maybe, and then we can go from there. So Allison, why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Please. Sure. Thanks so much for having me back on. And definitely echo for anybody here, throw stuff in the chat. Love audience engagement and making this interactive.
Mhm.
Hi everyone, I'm Allison Byers. I'm the founder of Scroobius and author of Fundraising for the Rest of Us. My very short origin story and why I'm doing anything that I do, which is always working toward more equitable access to early stage capital, is that Scroobius is my second company. After about a decade of working in consulting, moved into entrepreneurship and spun out a medical device company from MIT and a hospital system here in Boston, where I joined scientific co-founders as the business one to spin it
Mhm.
out, incorporate, negotiate the license, FDA registration, all the things, including our fundraising. Raised about 10 million for that company. And then I really struggled to raise our Series B round of funding. So we ended up going to what's called an asset sale, which is an exit, but one that not a lot of founders talk about openly, even though they should, because it's not the optimal exit situation, and you don't financially profit from it. So
Mhm.
it just so happened the team that acquired us was led by all male leadership, and they just so happened to raise $55 million after that transaction took place. For me, I didn't know any of the things I know now or everything that people might know me from. And it caused me to research, right? I'm pretty traumatic. I'm skipping over it, quickly, but uh, that is the thing that made me say, what happened here? What happens in fundraising? What happens with capital allocation? What is the venture industry like? And when I dove into understanding the systems at play, I had the experience of seeing the numbers, which for anybody who is not familiar, 99% of venture capital dollars go to male led teams. And in my state of Massachusetts, it's somehow even worse than that. So I had that experience of finding it out with the gut punch of, oh my God, but then also it was a little freeing and it lit that fire in me to say, oh, it wasn't my fault. I just had no idea what system I was playing in. And how many other founders have no idea what this system is? And that's what started my kind of redemptive journey into founding my company, writing my book, doing advocacy work, and all the things I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and being
And
here
and
is
being
obviously
here
one
is
of them. So, um, so what is Scroobius? Where does the name come from? And can you tell us maybe one or two examples of what it's done so far in the industry?
Sure. So Scroobius is a capital access platform that works on the understanding that capital follows relationships, not the other way around. So we don't focus on the financial transaction piece of it. We focus on helping people in the startup ecosystem find each other in a human first way at the right time for the right reasons and cultivate a relationship and trust signals, which is the thing that opens access and opens capital. So we're that relationship layer. We've had amazing things happen. Scroobius has been a company for 6 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. We've had over 1,000 members come through the platform. We're growing all the time. We've had founders secure funding quickly. We've had them secure funding over time because of the relationships they established on our platform where they would not otherwise have met each other. We also have full educational programming in there for both founders and for emerging angel investors so that we can increase the base of who's writing checks and who's funding innovation, and countless stories of people who completely changed their view of what this landscape is and deepen their understanding of how to communicate with each other, and started writing their first checks or started, being heard in pitch meetings because they finally understood how you speak investor language. So
Hmm.
all kinds of amazing things.
No, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So,
So,
as it stands
as
now,
it stands now,
what is
what is
your mission,
your
and how
mission,
does
and how
the
does
book
the book
fit into it?
fit into it?
So my mission is expanding access to early stage capital. All the things I do fall under there.
Mm.
Scroobius is a piece of it, and the book is extremely complementary. So with the book, I wanted to write this. It's another medium. It's another way to reach people who need this, who need the transparency, who need to feel seen, who need to understand that they matter, and who can get guidance from someone and who's been there, who speaks to them in a way that the existing books on fundraising that you see out there don't share that lived experience and don't expressly call out what it is like to fundraise in a system that was not built with you in mind and how you can do things differently. The book is really the guide, and then Scroobius is putting it into action. And that's
Mhm.
where they come together really nicely and separately can reach people in different ways. So again, it's all about access for me. The
Yeah.
capital itself is the lagging indicator. It's the
Mm.
access that starts it off.
Yeah. And I think,
And I think
um, when you talk about I like the analogy of like knowing what game you're actually playing, because I think, and then being able to adjust alongside that. Is that something founders should think about? Obviously, it's something they should think about, but how should they think about it? And how do you address
how
it
do you
in the book?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. And so in the book, the whole first half, it's split into two parts. So part one of the book is that it's explaining the game, it's explaining the landscape and where are you in it and what are all the pieces and parts of this game that you might not be aware of. Because when we think about fundraising, everything in popular culture and all of the kind of investor influencers out there that people listen to all talk about venture capital as the thing. And I know
Mhm.
this from working with, at this point, thousands of founders and having these conversations. Everyone thinks that's the default. I have to have venture if I'm going to build a successful business. But the reality of this game, or landscape, is VC is only right for a small subsection of businesses. It isn't even applicable to most of them, and
Mhm.
it's not transparent in any way at all. So the book isn't just about explaining VC or how to get VC. It's what's the full capital landscape. There are so many different ways to fund your business that aligns with how you need to and want to, so it's sustainable and successful for you. And how do you understand how to talk to each of them so you're speaking their language?
Mhm.
And how do you feel empowered that you don't have to change yourself to do that? They should want to fund you. So it is the first half of it all. What is even out there and how do you understand it in a way that makes sense and is easy to understand? No one's talking down to you or assuming you know things already. Why should you know? And then
Mhm.
the second half is all about that communication and breaking down every section of a pitch and why it matters, what investors are actually looking for, how to understand their viewpoint in, and how you can communicate what you need to while addressing the systemic inequities or bias that you probably will encounter along the way.
Yeah. And how
Yeah.
should
And how
businesses
should
think
business
about in their minds structuring their business? Let me take a step back. So, should businesses think about where? Okay, I'm trying to like think about how to actually ask this question. When should companies think about and then make decisions towards how they're going to, uh, if they need to get capital from outside sources, whether it's giving away equity, borrowing, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it is really that first step of thinking through how do I capitalize is understanding that the capital is the tool to build a successful business. It's not the end goal. So answering that question is really thinking through what is it I need to achieve to fulfill this vision I have at each
Hmm.
step of the way. And then how much money do I really need to get to the next step, which should be increasing the value of my company, right? Or hitting a milestone.
Hmm.
And that type of capital for that step could be venture, it could be a loan. It could be debt. You could be looking for a grant. It could be revenue based financing if you're revenue generating. It could be any number of different options. But when you switch and you shift your mindset to the capital is the tool to get me where I'm going, not the capital is the end goal. I just want to announce a big raise or something. It
Hmm.
it changes how you think about it and you start expanding. So like here's a real example that's helpful. Yesterday at a conference, I had a conversation with someone who really thought they needed to run a research study to prepare for raising a Series A. And they were thinking, should I raise from angel investors? Should I do this kind of little round to fund this study? And we talked it through, and I said, well, let's think about this. You're looking to fund a specific thing that is operational in your business. Are you sure looking for more equity investment is the best way to fund that? Maybe can you do it for a different cost? Can you work with potential providers to do this in kind or for a small piece of equity? Would that be more meaningful to your Series A? So there's more ways to think about money than just, I need some, I better go get investors.
Right.
Right.
Um,
Um,
and you also mentioned about the how having people come and write maybe even their first check. So can you talk about that? Because I looked through a bit of the book. I got, a sneak peek. But obviously I can't read the whole book in like a day. So, but you do talk about, and what's interesting to me, because I talk a lot and think about money in motion, next generation, and women in wealth in particular. Um, I just posted actually the, it's like a terrible statistic about how many uh, female financial advisors there are, as in the whole scheme of things. It's basically, it's around 20%. And just like, in a way, I see it as two sides of the same coin. The the investment advisory world is built in an old-fashioned kind of way, where it has a lot of assumptions and a lot of sort of built in the system, like you said. And I think the same is true of the VC side of entrepreneurship. I think something like 50% of new businesses, at least, are formed by women. So there's obviously a huge disconnect. They're not all bad, like you know. So So how do you see that, and how do you see uh, helping more women actually enter the advisor side of the coin impact the
impact.
amount of, sorry, impact how much actually ends up going to the businesses founded by and run by women?
Yeah, no, I love this question. And it's spot on. So one of the major driving principles for the homogeny that we see in the venture capital distribution is this well-known psychological principle of familiarity bias, or there's some overlap with pattern matching. But basically, every human, we see people who are like us, who are familiar, as less risky, and we see people who are not familiar or not like us. Sometimes this is called in group or out group, as more risky, and therefore less likely to be funded or to open access. The issue with venture capital is that for its entire existence, it has been overwhelmingly white men. And when it's all one group, when it's all white men, it's not that everyone's malicious or evil or trying to block people out. I don't believe that. But you do view other people you identify with as less risky. And that's where your money goes. And then you look for patterns of successes to model your future investments on, but your whole data set is homogenous. So it's all going to keep doing that. You're all looking for patterns of one thing. Uh, in order to break out of that, it's not that we need to fix VC, in my opinion. We do need to diversify it, but we also shouldn't rely on it as the primary source of innovation capital. The private wealth ecosystem, which is where we see angel investors and family offices and the wealth advisors that guide where those people put their money, is representative of the general population. And all of these diverse voices and identities will see people like them as less risky inherently. That's just a psychological principle. So we need to increase participation, because in that private wealth market, there also have been generations of marginalization and oppression and lack of access, particularly for women who are coming into enormous sums of money in this coming decade. We haven't been allowed to participate. We've been put into a box of philanthropy because that wasn't threatening to anybody, right? Like legally, we weren't allowed to participate fully in this economy. And we don't have any generations of women. I don't have any generation of women older than me to look to who had the ability to freely invest in the private market. So we're trailblazing, and we're now aware, and we're hungry, and we want to. And we have financial advisors who understand that, but maybe aren't always sure how to make us feel welcome getting into that space. But the more we activate angels to understand the private market, so it's not scary anymore, the more we're going to see checks coming just at a rapid pace. And we're starting to see that right now.
So
So
yeah, so when you say we're starting to see that
we're
right
starting
now,
to
do
see
you
that
have
right now, do
some
you have some
data or
data or
examples?
examples?
Yeah, so if we look at angel group data, which I'm a data person, you're a data person, we share that bond. It's really hard to get that data because you don't have to report it anywhere, right? Like angel investors don't have to go register with the SEC. You don't have to, join a system to say I'm accredited or something. So we use proxy data. But some of the data we have comes from the Angel Capital Association. There's also a center at the University of New Hampshire where the latest numbers say that 47% of angel investors are women now, that we're growing really quickly. And we see an almost exactly parallel number in terms of where are the dollars going, because we care about investing in those who haven't had the chance to innovate. They are building things that we want to see in the world. And because our capital is so flexible, we don't have a duty to like limited partners, to other investors like venture funds do. It's just our money. We can put it where we want to, and we see it as less risky, right? So that's some of the data that I find so encouraging. And then, being very active in this ecosystem, I'm seeing new efforts pop up literally every day, whether it's an angel group or there's an initiative now and it's starting in Atlanta called Women on Cap Tables that my friend Karen Robinson Cope is starting. I just learned of another one here in Boston. I mean, I'm hearing about it all the time.
That's great.
That's great.
And
And
what I would love
what I
is
would love
to
is
share
to.
those resources in the comments. And, so that way that it actually sticks, because, I don't know if people are going to be necessarily watching minute 20 later, whatever it is. Um, so, so how can people get more educated to become angel investors, or to open up, either from the investor side or the founder side, to find these groups and people?
Yeah, I mean, so for anyone who is angel curious, there are a lot of resources out there. I would always encourage people to look in their region, in their ecosystem. Are there local efforts? Just start asking around and you'll probably find some. So, angel groups are one way that you can join others. Some of them have educational components, some of them don't. So, you should research what does or doesn't. But honestly, the most important thing is to just what I call get your reps in. Start ingraining yourself in communities where you can find and talk to founders and other investors. This is specifically what Scroobius is designed for, is to create these low risk, low lift interactions where you can be natural and just start talking to people. You can be helpful by giving feedback on a pitch deck without having to be pitched or have the money involved. You can ask your what you think are dumb questions, but they're not. Everyone is wondering them. Um, you have to
For sure.
learn, just like any new skill. All of this is learnable and fun, but you have to get started. You can't just consume online information and think that you can learn everything you need. You need the interaction. You have to build the muscle of understanding what do you want to invest in, what is your thesis. That's your very first step. And I'll give a shout out to some of our partners at Scroobius Milestone Growth Capital Institute. They're co-developing educational material with us, which is on Scroobius, but they train angel investors in this. Angel Capital Association also has some great educational programming. And then there's organizations like Pipeline Angels and Eiffel that teach you how you get started in this. But you got to just go out and start talking to people and get comfortable with it. It's the first step, and everyone feels awkward, and that's totally normal. And you realize, even experienced angels, I've done 14 investments now at this point. We still don't know what we're doing, really. You have fun, and you got to just meet other people.
Well,
Well,
right.
it's
Even at
even
14,
at
it's a very
14,
small
it's
sample
very.
size. Like it's a tiny number. It's a tiny fractional number of what's out there. The other side of that coin is, what about getting people, especially women or people that have been underfunded, underrepresented, on more boards? I know there's organizations that work towards that. Do you see that as also part of the flipping the script on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, you can point to basically any organizational structure or any positions of power, and women and people of color will always be severely underrepresented against their population size, right? Like, I don't know of anything where we have all the access or power structure that we should, according to our representation of the population. So, yeah, women on boards is a huge part of it for both sides, both for the company, it creates better business outcomes to have diversity on boards, and for the people themselves, for the women to feel comfortable in a space where you might think you don't know enough. Once you realize you do and you get that training and that learning, well, then you're going to open up the door and bring other people in. If we don't have that base up there at the top who learns and then invites, it's very hard to break out of a homogenous pattern.
100%.
100%.
And I also think
And
that
I also
sometimes
think that sometimes
the best way to
the best
support
way to
an
support
entrepreneur is
an
not
entrepreneur
necessarily
is not necessarily
just cutting a
just
check,
cutting a
but
check,
it's
but
making an
it's making
introduction
an
to a
introduction
good
to a
potential
good
partner
potential partner
or someone that can
or
actually
someone
help.
that can actually help.
And also, a lot of people may not even realize they're actually accredited investors, and that may hopefully be broadening as a class of uh, accessible folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of people don't realize they're accredited. It's more than people think. Uh, and yes, like I'm advocating for modernizing the structure of how we define accredited. And a lot of people don't realize that you just are accredited. You don't have to like register. I get a ton of questions or statements, especially from women that are like, oh, I can't wait until I can figure out how to show I'm accredited and start investing. And I'm like, you don't? Do you meet this criteria from the SEC? You can Google it. It's based on your net income or your net worth. Then just you can just start investing. Like you just are. You don't have to tell anyone. And yes, the modernization, today it is unfortunate that legally people can be allowed to go gamble all of their money away or purchase luxury items until they're broke, but they can't own private stock that could do good and generate wealth
Yeah.
because of the way that we've defined accreditation. But yes, so many people are accredited, and even if you're not, you can invest through crowdfunding portals. There's equity crowdfunding. That's a great way to start building your skills, honing your muscles. Just go look through opportunities out there and invest small amounts. There's ways to participate even if you don't meet the accreditation standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And
Sue added some
Sue
stuff. I'm
added
going to
some
put
stuff.
that
I'm
on
going to put
stage.
that on stage.
Some of the
Yes, and
resources.
Sue is wonderful. Everyone should connect with Sue, who also is a powerhouse in the angel investing space and empowerment and education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think,
And I
look,
think
people have to realize how
have to
important
realize how
having
important
equity is.
having equity is.
And I think that there's also other ways to build equity within a company you believe in. Maybe not all will agree, but you can do consulting for equity, or I'm sure there's different structures that people have done.
People have
Do you talk
done.
about that
Do
in
you
the
talk
book?
about that in your book?
Yeah, well, advising is a great way to do that. So, when we think about capital, we usually talk about it in terms of money, financial capital. But capital can also mean your network. If you give that to people, that's network capital. You can have builder capital. If you get hands-on and help a founder in a meaningful way with their daily operations or their marketing or their outreach, amazingly helpful, sometimes even more than the money. And you can become an official advisor to a company, which should come with equity, with some type of formal agreement that has equity attached. And you're meaningfully helping that company succeed without necessarily having to have this, money dynamic that can complicate it. But you're now incentivized to make this company work because your equity could be worth a lot of money. And the founders getting your expertise and your help. So there certainly are ways to have ownership stakes without it necessarily having the price tag if that's prohibitive to collaboration for both parties.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I want to, so we've really
So we've really
focused so far on the investor side and how to become an investor. I want to hear your thoughts and the process you take through the book and just in real life with, let's say, a founder who's thinking this through and building their pitch and building relationships. What's the right way to approach the whole process, get ready for it, think about it, and execute?
It's like a little bit of a big question.
Well,
Um, um, no, so I mean, there's different elements to it, right? There's the business building side and there's the fundraising side. With the fundraising side, I mean, the very first step is you've got to build those relationships early. All of the big funding rounds you hear about, all of these announcements, they didn't happen quickly. They were the result of likely years of relationship building before money came into the picture. And I think especially for, what I call the rest of us, I don't love using terms like underrepresented or marginalized that have these negative connotations. The rest of us, most of us, we tend to wait until we need the money. We feel like we shouldn't be reaching out to people before we have an ask. But the truth is that money, again, is the lagging indicator. You have to develop the trust pattern first. And you do that through genuine relationship building. You find people who have genuine value to you, to your company, and where you can also provide value to them. So you have a mutual exchange and you develop that over time. I have so many examples myself, and with Scrooby is my by far largest investor and huge ally, invested after 4 years of knowing each other, and I didn't even know that he had the ability to make that kind of investment. And
Okay.
it's that kind of relationship that ends up creating the access. So step one, just talk about what you're doing, broaden who you reach out to, and reach out with a give first attitude and don't ask for money right away. If you focus on the transaction, you're skipping over the trust building and it's just not going to work. And then in terms of your fundraising strategy, I really encourage anyone listening to go pre-order the book because it walks through in depth all the stages and all the ways you think about it and prepare. But the biggest one with fundraising is to just remember whoever you take money from or wherever the money comes from, because it might be non-dilutive, so it might not be an investment per se, but every source of money has its own needs and motivations to be satisfied. And you need to take the time to understand their needs and their motivations to make sure you're seeking money that is aligned with how you're trying to build. And that's the biggest thing to do first and to understand. And it will inform how you decide to seek capital.
That's incredibly powerful. And that's great stuff. Uh, because I think an empowered entrepreneur, a confident entrepreneur, goes about their, not just the fundraising part of their work, but their actual work and the actual, like, I'm going to use a word that I don't know if you understand it or other people understand it, but I love to use it. It's the word I hear in Hebrew the most right now. It's tachlis. And I don't know if you know what that means, but for everyone else and maybe Allison, it just means like to the point. And so just getting to the point, being focused on what's actually going to move the needle, and make impact. So, and I like how you wrote, about stacking the odds in your favor. I like thinking about things as a stack, like the tech stack, the fundraising stack. So can you get into that idea and, uh, maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I love bringing that word into it because it is it's get to the point, but get to the point the other person needs. It's the perspective of your audience because the you get to the point might not be their point that they need you to get to. So yes, so stacking the odds in your favor. I give a few kind of tactical tips. It's my whole style is not just a lecture or a theoretical. It's okay, what do you take with you? What do you actually do? So one, everyone hates the term warm intros. I know it, but guess what? We all do it. Whenever we want or need a new person or thing, where do we go? No matter who we are, our own trusted network. And we say, who do you know? Who have you worked with? So it's not only in circles we can't access, it's in your own too. But if you're trying to get into new circles, there's other ways to think about it. Think about who is in your trusted network or who can you go to that's in their trusted network that might bring you into it. And again, start early. Don't start when you urgently need something. Start early. So if you think one day you might want to go and pitch these VC funds, you're not there yet, go look at all the people they've invested in. Look at their portfolio, look up the founders. Do you relate to any of them? Are they in a tangential space? Can you offer any of them anything? Work with your peer group and build a little trust pattern, and then you get the warm introduction up. But if you just start focusing on now, I need the warm introduction now to this person, it's transactional, and that's not stacking the odds in your favor. And then research the people. It is always about people. I don't know, everyone listening, like, do you get it? It's about relationships and people. That's how this industry
That's the top
functions.
list.
Yeah. But not just the funds, right? I was in the case, I experienced this. My partner left the VC fund. Then we got a new partner who I didn't know, who didn't have the same conviction, and it totally changed the dynamic. So get to know people, not just at funds, but within the ecosystem, because roles shift all the time, no matter where you are. So know the person. And then also be visible, have a presence. There's a lot of founders that are worried, like someone's going to take my idea, or I'm in stealth, or I can't talk about it because I'm afraid, right? It's a piece, it's worry, it's fear-based. But if you don't talk about what you're doing, no one's going to have that base to understand if they should take you seriously or not. And you're not going to pull in resources and people who you might not otherwise, but you do because they heard you, right? I'm just about as loud as I can get, and I am online everywhere and do all these things. And you don't have to go all the way to my degree of this, but gosh, the people I've been able to meet, the supporters, the advocates, the allies, you, right? All come from talking about what I do and being visible. So start doing that. And you never know who you're going to attract the attention of.
Yeah, well, I think
Yeah. Well,
attract
I
is
think
the right
attract
word.
is the
It
right
sort of
word.
like
It sort of
becomes its
like
own
becomes its
magnet,
own magnet.
which then creates, its own momentum. I mean, I'm not a physics student, clearly, or math, but you get it. It becomes that sort of flywheel of activity, and you get into more rooms, and you keep pushing and move that needle. And obviously, you're building relationships, you're building credibility. I mean, that's the whole thing I've been doing on LinkedIn and elsewhere. And then obviously it has to match in real life. So
So
what are you hearing or seeing now that things are, back to quote unquote normal with in person, but still a lot of pitching is done over Zoom or other venues. What should people kind of bring to the table when they're in different places or spaces?
Um, can you tell me a little bit more about what should they bring to the table? What do you?
Well,
well,
like in terms of
in
either
terms of
energy
energy.
or just, like the framing. A guy I actually was just looking at your book, like even the framing of your, like there's so I'm in 1 Million Cups here in New York, and there's once a month it's in person, and the rest of the time it's on Zoom. And David Goldberg, who is a really great entrepreneur and um, just a great person here in the city. He's all about like the microphone and the vibe and how confident you are, your pace. Do you use filler words? How do you kind of approach that? The ums and uhs, and even things like saying your name too fast, because people people may not remember any of the other things you talk about. But if you say RL server, like they don't hear you. It sounds like a mumble, and then they're not gonna want to take that next step, or they're just gonna be. Actually, I just was texting with someone, and she said that she had a Zoom with someone, and she could just tell they were either doing something else on screen or doing something else. It's like, how do you? Maybe the question is ultimately, how do you capture and keep attention when you're not in person? Because I think that's actually
I think
probably
that's
a breaking point.
Yeah, no, got it. And yes, so the way I look at it when it comes to, if we're talking about kind of fundraising meetings or meetings to do with building your startup is first that fundamental understanding that it is a different skill to fundraise than it is to build a business. Like they're very different. And unfortunately, a lot of innovators are funded because they're very skilled at fundraising, maybe not so skilled at running a business. And we see a lot of those kind of big flameouts once money is achieved and the business has some major issues. And the
Mm.
reverse can be true, and it often is, particularly with technical, academic, scientific founders, people with a strong business background. You can be very good at your business, but not confident at all in the fundraising skill side of it, and it prevents access. So when it comes to those types of fundraising meetings, there's really three kinds or three flavors of it. One is the performance. So the performance mode, this is where you're at a demo day, you're on a pitch stage. It could be virtual. A lot of the times these are virtual now and not in person. And that is what you're
Mm.
talking about, right? The pronunciation, the cadence, the staring directly into your webcam, like I'm doing, right? I've trained myself. When I talk, I look at that. When you talk, I'm looking at you, and you can tell the difference if you're looking at the screen or right into the eye contact. And it's the
Mhm.
projection and the confidence and the smiling and all of those things. That's your performance mode. And you got to practice it. You got to bring that energy. You're performing because your goal is to make an impression, hold attention, and have someone want to learn more and reach out to you. So you're performing, right? There's another mode of this, which is informing, which is when you maybe have a first meeting with somebody. And you don't have to do this, what I'm doing now, projecting and the eye contact and the over and the excitement and all of that, but you're getting to know someone, you're teaching someone. You still need the confidence, the control of what you're talking about. And yeah, if you're kind of looking down a lot or multitasking or saying a ton of filler words and mumbling, it doesn't come across that you're informing somebody about this opportunity. And then there's a deep dive mode. This is what's called due diligence, where you're having longer meetings, there's more people there, you're
Mhm.
collaborating toward a deal. And that's much more conversational. It's not preparing for a presentation. And so being able to shift among those modes and being able to turn on what you need to and dial back what you don't, depending where you are, is really important, especially when it's virtual and everything gets muted a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also,
And also,
what about the actual pitch deck? Because if you are meeting with the partner, or and obviously within the VC firms themselves, there's a structure, and you might meet with someone who may not ultimately be the decision maker, and that's a whole other topic. But also, uh, you have to assume that there's going to be more eyes on what you're sending than were at the initial meeting. So how do you stack those odds in your favor? And what do you what are sort of
what
like
are
the really key, like, couple points that you want to use that as a tool to um, hopefully get the best result?
Yeah, absolutely. You always have to assume, and you should in fact want someone to share your pitch deck, because it means they're interested and they're trying to bring other people in or get second opinions. You
Mhm.
don't want it to actually just land with someone and not go anywhere else.
Right.
So there's a bunch of very tactical tips and things that I go over in the book about how you structure a deck and what you actually put on a slide. I can tell you the biggest impact thing you can do in any presentation, but especially a pitch deck, is write header statements at the top of every slide that tells you the point of the slide. It doesn't say team or go to market. It is a sentence that says, what is the so what from this slide? And they should
Mm.
carry me through the narrative, the story of that deck, because investors will and do, if they're there, read just those headers to get the story, and then go back and look at the details if it makes sense. Because I don't have time to do it otherwise. Every deck gets 3 minutes on average. They don't have time. And you
Mhm.
make their job easy and immediately stand out because you made their job easy. And you have that clear story, and they can pass it on and they can share it with people without needing you to talk the whole thing through or present it or extra explanation. It is truly an amazing tool that you have to make that deck stand out and be understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that was so see, that was a filler word right there. I'm doing it to show people. You
Yeah,
know.
and then I go through the bug, like there's so much I could talk about pitch decks for days. But it's
Yeah.
we have a core 10 structure. There are really 10 sections that you have to communicate that investors care about. But really, at the end of the day, it's are you telling the story from their perspective, right? Which we talked about earlier in this chat.
For sure.
And understanding that even within these 10 sections or whatever framework you decide to use, know that investors come from a place of risk. Always. They're always assessing risk. So every slide you put
Mm.
in there is your chance to remove some of that risk, but you have to understand what the risk they're assessing is. It's not always clear, it's not always intuitive, because you're telling the story of an investment, not marketing to a customer. You're
Mm.
telling a totally different story that only one audience ever needs, that you've probably never told before. So having these sections, for yourself, here's the risk I need to take away. And to do that, here's what I have to say on the slide. And I'm going to tell it to you in one sentence that leads you through a story. So by the end of it, what I'm doing seems inevitable and not so risky.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
spoke to
I spoke
Nina
to
Rad a couple weeks ago, actually on a live here, and she likened it to the layers of an onion, and that like each layer of the onion should be like a lower risk to the core of why you should be investing or working with this particular startup. Um, who's who out there is doing a good job of this, either in community building or um, being a active voice, being an active investor, or maybe an exited founder that's been there, done it, and now is trying to kind of not pull up the ladder behind them, which I think is an important piece.
Uh, Yes, that is a very important piece. And there definitely is that dynamic of scarcity mindset. And if I succeed, if anyone else does, it takes away some of my ability. And so there is a lot of ladder pulling, unfortunately. But
Mm.
I do feel extremely optimistic that this current time of entrepreneurship with more visibility into inequities and systemic bias has made people realize that we're all in this together, and we only win by winning together, not one at a time. And it doesn't have to be scarce. We can create a bigger opportunity for all of us together. In terms of voices that are out there, I mean, obviously I do this all the time, so people should feel free to connect with me and engage with what we're doing. Katie Dunn puts out a ton of great stuff. Highly recommend following her. Sue, who was here in this live, Sue Bevan Baggett, puts out a lot. Marsha Dawood has some great stuff out there, particularly on the investing side and helping women understand how you get into this space and feel comfortable. She's got 2 books out. Highly recommend to everybody. I mean, there's so many people that I could name, and tons of great programs that are starting. And I mean, I can follow up and put maybe in the chat a list of resources and names that I would recommend following this, but there's no shortage out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would add
I would add
Nicole
Nicole
Casperson
Casperson
and
Mhm.
FinTech
and
Expand. Like
FinTech
there
Expand. Like
are a lot.
there are a lot.
So
So
um, I asked you this the last time, and you gave me an answer. I didn't know who the person was. I don't know if you want to talk about her, or if you want to pick another person that if you could have this conversation with, and talk about impact investing and growing that pie and all that. Who would you have that conversation with?
Yeah, so I thought you might ask me this again, and I put some thought into it because I was like, I'm not giving the same answer. What's a different answer? Someone who I don't know, but who, oh my God, what an amazing individual in a different space, but it ties is Brian Stevenson. Do you know who he is?
No.
So he is a lawyer and author, and he's the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. He has done unbelievable work, particularly in the incarceration system, by helping people understand the human stories behind what is happening in a system that required change across the board, from private industry to regulation and policy to public discourse, really in a similar way to how I see fundraising, where investment isn't well understood. Like, just how important investment capital is to the innovations that we consume as a society is not understood by most people, including regulators and legislators and policy. They really don't understand the space, in part because it has been so opaque, and the level of inequity in its distribution impacts how we live our lives and who gets access to the economy and wealth and who doesn't, and who gets their needs met and who doesn't. Like, women's health is a huge one. We are so far behind men's health, in large part because of the lack of funding to innovations in the women's health space and to women innovators. And so, if I could have a conversation with someone, gosh, I would love to understand his motivation for persevering through extreme emotional weight, which is something that I deal with. Again, he had a different issue and dealing with death penalty policy and things that are very heavy, but I can't tell you the stories I hear of sexual abuse and harassment in the fundraising process all of the time. It's really heavy, a lot of the time. How he works through that and how he took a systems level view, because that's what I'm interested in, of here is something that needs to change across all of these elements. And if one of them doesn't happen, we're not going to see the system operate differently. Gosh, that would be fascinating.
That's a good one. For the record, the last time we spoke was Charlotte Woodward Pierce, who I never heard of. But he was the only person, as you mentioned, she was the only one who was at the 1848 Seneca Convention and around for the 19th Amendment, which, by the way, it's only like 100 years ago. So you mentioned the history and the structure and the system. It's like, if people really thought about it.
It's so recent. It's recent history. I mean, my grandma, who I talk about a lot in this book, actually was only 8 years. She was 8 years old when that happened. Like, there's people alive today when that happened. And when I talk about women not having access legally to our economy, some of this legislation came about in the 80s, and it's still not really active today. I was alive when some of this happened, right? Like, it's crazy. And even if you look at venture capital itself, the industry of VC started after World War II. It's recent, but we treat it like it's always been here. And it hasn't, which means change is happening in real time, and we can all own our agency and be part of it.
100%, and I think the same is true on the wealth management side. So I think both those things can change and evolve together. And obviously, we try to push the ball a little bit forward every day and, support one another. So please support Allison, go check out the book, follow her stuff. Any last thoughts or things on your mind that you want to talk about?
I mean, the last thing, just for whoever's watching this, I and I say this in the book, and I say this in a lot of the public speaking and workshops I do, but it's so important to repeat it over and over again. Is if you're an entrepreneur, this is one of the hardest things you can do, and it's really hard to persevere if you feel like you don't matter. And a lot of us end up feeling like we don't matter in this space. And I just want everyone to know that you do. And it's a system that you are in that makes you feel that way. And you don't have to. Go get in different rooms, find the people who see that you matter and meet more of them. Tell people about what you're doing because you have just as much right to talk about it as anybody else, and that you matter. And that's what I would leave people with.
Yeah, that's a really great thought. And I appreciate your time today and everyone that came. And I'm gonna put this on. I actually just started a Substack and put it out as a podcast because everyone just assumes it's a podcast anyway. So, may as well like make it the reality. So I think we all have the ability to, as you're kind of implying, shape reality, push forward, and make real impact. So this is great. Thank you very much, Allison.
Oh, well, thank you for having me back for this great conversation. And I will promote your Substack as well. I love what you're doing, and you are really allyship in action by sharing so many people's stories.
Cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
All right.